Good morning, boys and girls. It's another beautiful day on this extraordinary planet in this marvelous universe. Today, I also want to point your attention to this extraordinary book again called Instant Zen. And I'm going to read a short passage from it because I think it shows just how clearly articulated it is. This is from page 70. Under Step Back and See is the name of the chapter. An early teacher said, or is it the chimes ringing? He should have stopped there, but he went on to vex others by saying, it is not the wind or the chimes ringing, but only your mind ringing. And then the question is asked, what further opportunity to study do you seek? Next paragraph. When Zen came to China, an early teacher said, it is not the wind or the flag moving, it is your mind moving. The answer the ancient teacher gave this testimony, why don't you understand? So that's the question for the audience, right? And anyone else. It is not the wind or the flag moving, it is your mind moving. The ancient teacher gave this testimony, why don't you understand? Just because of subject and object. That is why it is said, the objective is defined based on the subjective. Since the objective is arbitrarily defined, it produces your arbitrary subjectivity, producing difference where there was neither sameness nor difference. Okay. Questions? Oh, by the way, that's read much better than I did. You know, I kind of struggled with it. Much better than I did in the audio version of this marvelous book. Okay, go ahead. Questions?
Okay, so one question I have this week. I feel like recently I've been like working hard, and then this week one project kind of came to an end, and so it's been a little bit more relaxed. But I noticed it feels like just like my brain's tired, and when I sit down to meditate and contemplate, I feel like I'm not getting very far, and my brain, my contemplation capacity is just not very good this week. And
how long since you stopped your project or whatever?
Monday.
So 4 days.
Yeah.
You getting enough sleep and exercise, good food?
For the most part.
Okay. So then the question is, what are you contemplating?
Well,
are you contemplating brain fatigue?
I've been trying to contemplate time this week. And the last week we talked about the present moment. I've been trying to contemplate that, and
well, that's a difficult thing to contemplate.
Yeah.
Why not contemplate brain fatigue and contemplate what is the brain and how does it get fatigued?
Mm.
And is it fatigued? Or contemplate attention,
mm-hmm.
or contemplate concentration, or contemplate confusion, or contemplate how your brain cannot see the obvious, or psychological defense. I mean, so contemplation is important. I mean, for beginners, yes, they have to train their mind. They have to do a little, vipassana, sitting meditation or whatever it is, and just separate themselves from their mind. And for later, then what you need to do is just calm your brain down enough to where you could focus on what's present.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're unable to contemplate one thing, which I suppose it's anything
Oh,
else.
you're cutting out a bit.
Okay, how's this?
What did you just say?
Is that better?
I missed what you said.
Okay. It's important to contemplate what's there, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have something else you want to contemplate and you're unable to do so, then it's interesting to understand why, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there, it could be something as mundane as fatigue or I don't know, lack of sleep, lack of food, preoccupation with some worries or something else that's on your mind. Or it could be a psychological defense. And that's a fascinating subject.
What do you say more about that?
Recently, I've been involved in a case of a woman who's being scammed by somebody, I think they're from Nigeria. But at any rate, for 3 years, he's been asking her for money and telling her that, he loves her, I suppose, and that they're going to get together any time now. And then there's a whole litany of all these different excuses why he can't see her or can't mail her or can't. And, he wants her to pick up a package, the usual, pick up a package and of gold and dollars. And she needs to go pay the customs fee. Or he needs to pay the customs fee, so she needs to send him a certain number of thousands of dollars so she can pick up the package at customs.
Right.
Well, that whole story's bogus. And invariably, the guy is not available because of one medical mishap or another, and his agent speaks for him. But the stories get more and more and more incredible, and yet she believes them all, even though part of her must doubt it. And then I was looking on YouTube. This is a very common scam where they basically take a poor woman, manipulate her heart, and stretch her out for years and basically extort her for money. This guy says he's going to die, but he can't afford dialysis, and he's in a hospital under an assumed name. And so only his agent can speak for him. But the doctors won't call anybody in the States because they don't do that. Or no, he's behind on his bill. Right. And the reason he's behind on his bill, even though he has $1 million in gold in cash, is that he wasn't able to pay it because he's under an alias or some harebrained story like that. Right. And yet they believe it, hook and sinker. And there's many, many women like this and many men like this too, right? Mm-hmm. So, do you see a little red light?
What do you mean?
A record light? Or something like that. Okay, good.
Yeah, I was just checking.
So that's one example. That would be delusional denial, right? A defense mechanism.
Okay.
Or sometimes people project onto others. There's just a whole. Every student, every person should study psychological defenses of the mind, sublimation, intellectualization, humor. Displacement, active mastery, identification with the aggressor, and then psychotic defenses, etc. So if you can't contemplate one thing, you can learn about something else, and then try and figure out why it is. Who wants to give up their idea of the present? Just think of the ramifications of that. We know that the past is illusory. You know what I mean? That it's completely subjective
and unreliable.
And we know that the future is completely uncertain, and our projections are unreliable. So what do we have left to hang on to? The present, right? So who the hell would want to give that up? What mind would want to give that up? So you have to think about psychological defenses. But from the passage I read earlier, it's crystal clear. The objective is defined in terms of the subjective.
Say that again?
The objective is defined in terms of the subjective. And we know that the objective is entirely arbitrary. And so the subjective is also arbitrary. I mean, it's just complete logic, I mean, straightforward logic. Not that that's all you need. And maybe it's premature to introduce this. I don't think so. But your mind is your mind. Now, it may look totally different if you're on a boat in the ocean. Your mind looks different than it looks. I mean, people have this idea that only their thoughts are their mind.
Right.
Only their thoughts, their memories, and their fantasies are their mind. But we know that isn't true. But who wants to give up on their entire world model and all their entire mental model as well? So you can expect psychological defenses, and that's why it takes so long, is because you have to either beat these down or bore them to death. And the way people used to bore them to death was with psychoanalysis or with Zen City, where, you know, this parody of Zen, parody as a joke of Zen, where people sit and face a wall for years and years and years. I can't. It's hard for me to imagine how people can imagine that the world is out there and not in here, or both. But then when you think it through, it becomes clear it's not like that at all. And there's only one thing that's real, and one thing that we can grasp, and that's experience. Awareness of experience.
So this all makes sense. I can grasp it, but there's still, I'm missing something still, right? Like
well, why don't you do Zeno's paradox instead? Explain that to the audience in case they don't know what Zeno's paradox is.
From what I can remember, Zeno's paradox takes the example of shooting an arrow and asking the question, how far, like, where is the arrow halfway through? And then you say, oh, it's halfway, like, at what time is the arrow halfway?
It's a 10 meters from the bow to the target.
Right, and so...
All right, now describe it.
In say it takes 2 seconds to hit the target. At 1 second, it's halfway there. But then you can go halfway of halfway, and halfway of that, and then halfway of that, and you say, like, well, how long does it take to move that much? And there's always a smaller amount you can move, right? And so
I don't think they introduce time, because that would be more complicated, because you have acceleration and things like that.
So just motion.
He did use time. He just used distance. And what he showed was logically, right? At some point, it's gone halfway, and another point, it's gone half of that. So it's gone a quarter of the way, the next an eighth of the way, next 16th,
right?
32nd, so on and so forth. But it's an infinite regress. There's always this slight fraction before it gets there, no matter how big the numerator is. That's the numerator, the number on the bottom, right?
The numerator is on the top.
Okay, the denominator.
Yeah.
It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The fraction gets smaller and smaller and smaller into an infinite regress, suggesting that it can never reach there, right? And mathematicians that's because it's logically sound.
Say that again. Mathematicians what?
Have problems with it as well. They have to use some infinities or to lop off the edge of an end of an infinity to make it fit or something like that. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician.
I don't know.
But the point is that the distance must get infinitesimally smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Now, let's take the past and the future. What do we call the difference between those two? In time, not space.
It's a matter of relativity, right? Or point of reference.
Yes. But what we call the space between the past and the future, what do we call that?
The present.
Yeah. So what's the problem?
Well, it seems the present requires a point of reference.
Okay, well, how big is a point? A point doesn't have dimensions.
Right.
That's the whole point. All right? So how many points could we put into a mayonnaise jar?
Infinite.
Right, exactly. See?
Because it's not physical. It's
it can't be physical because if it is, it takes up space, and that's going to screw up your triangles or screw up everything else. I thought you said you couldn't contemplate. Here you are. You're doing great. So
yeah.
by analogy, okay. So let's just do this just for fun, right? Let's just say the present is the point between the past and the future.
Mm-hmm.
The present is a point, right?
Yeah.
Points don't have dimensions. So how many presents can we put into a thimble?
An infinite.
Exactly. Now, let's say we wanted to walk across. We made a line of just points. No lines. I'm sorry, not a line, just a series of points.
Mm-hmm.
Dimensionless points. How long would it take us to walk over 100,000 of those points? It's a nonsensical question because it has no dimensions.
Right. Right. It's a problem with the question.
All right. So now what's your problem? You told me the present was a point. So if something has no dimensions, has no weight, has no mass, has no momentum, right?
Right.
Is not accelerating, is not subject to gravitational fields, do we say that thing exists or doesn't exist?
I mean, it exists in a sense. It doesn't exist.
It's arbitrary.
Right.
So, do you have this instant Zen with you by any chance?
I don't know.
Dang it. Well, that's exactly what he speaks to. Now, people want to make a big deal about the division between the objective and the subjective.
Right.
They say the world is objective, but what you experience is subjective. Okay, fine. But how objective is that objective? Or is it entirely arbitrary?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's arbitrary, no wonder your mind's arbitrary. Or the subjective is arbitrary. All we have is experience.
Right.
That's the only way. The only reason we declare something real or not real or whatever the terminology may be at the moment is subjectively. Or if we were to do it objectively, then all we're doing is arbitrarily measuring it against something else.
Mm-hmm.
The universe is scale free, I guess is another way to put it. It doesn't look like that.
Mm-hmm.
At first, but then when you study it, the way Einstein did, then you realize that what we call distance just vanishes as you approach the speed of light.
Right.
And the same thing with time. And then we've got these crazy notions. I love these black holes where it's just like did you ever see a Beatles movie called The Yellow Submarine?
I haven't actually seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
When I say sea of holes, does that ring any bells?
No.
Well, we're living in a sea of holes. Right? They were prescient in that way. And then these holes, that you get all kinds of wild theories from time and space exchange places. So you can't walk through space, but you can walk through time.
Mm-hmm.
Or you get stretched out into a tiny piece of, spaghetti, then vermicelli, then a thread. You get stretched out. Oh, but then there's another one. All the information's left on the outside. Right? And remember, they aren't really holes. They're more like, I could be wrong, but I think they're a lot more like spheres, black holes.
I don't know. That's something I wish I had more time to learn about.
There was a book that was pretty good about that. I read recently. I can't remember the name of it. Okay, we'll leave all that alone. That was just for fun. Mm. The point is that you're having difficulty contemplating.
Yeah, well, related to this too, I read Childhood's End.
Oh, okay. Tell the audience about it.
So it's a book about. It's written in the 50s, I think, and it's set in the future, and it's about an alien civilization visits Earth, and it basically creates a utopia on Earth, but it's a little controlling, but it makes everything good for humans.
How does it do that?
By they start off by they've got some ships and they come in, and then they've got one guy that they're talking to who's part of the UN, the United Nations, and they're basically.
When you say they, you mean the aliens, or you're talking about the
aliens?
Right?
Yeah, so the aliens are interfacing with the humans through like one guy, and then they're sending them. They're communicating via like messages, just text. Yeah. But they kind of I forget what they do exactly, but they block the sun on like a country that did not agree with what they were saying for like a day, and then they capitulated.
So if a country's committing genocide, what they do is they warn it by causing the total eclipse of the sun for a day or so.
Mm-hmm. And they end up.
So they're able to manipulate the human's behavior. So you need to say that these aliens are much more intelligent than the humans.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they're much more powerful technologically.
Yeah. But
and what they, if I recall correctly, what they do is they create, basically they embody the fantasy of AI, which is infinitely more intelligent and much more clever when it comes to manipulating humans' behavior. But this AI/alien
is benevolent.
Manipulates the human towards their own good. Like it won't allow warfare, it won't allow cruelty to animals, and it has its own way, which is usually not very warlike. It's not warlike at all. Mm-hmm. Of getting the humans to behave in their own interests.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
So the humans now have learned how to get along, what to do and not to do. Like, don't factory farm animals. Don't declare war on each other. Or don't But the Earth is very, very prosperous. Correct.
Yep.
And people have come to rely on these aliens, or which is a substitute for AIs, can come to rely on the AI for leadership and guidance.
Yeah, and there's a subset of people that are unhappy with it because the humans they're all happy and content, but they don't have the drive that they used to have for discovery.
For art and poetry and science.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the AI suggest for these people?
I don't think they suggest anything, but they tolerate them.
Yeah, what do they allow for these people?
These people, they like settle an island where they try to like
put on plays.
Yeah, and have value the arts and that sort of thing more. And
they argue so in this one little enclave, a minority of people are allowed to pursue the arts as hard as they want. Ancient Greek plays, poetry, painting, anything they want. Correct?
Yeah.
Are those people happy?
I think they were.
Yeah, they weren't bad, about average for how we are right now, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, what happens then to their children would be a spoiler to the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we learned that the AIs also answer to something.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to spoil the book.
Right.
But in terms of a metaphor, by the way, have you read the what's it called? The Future Project involving Scott Alexander and then a bunch of geeks, very, very thoughtful nerds in AI,
no,
including ex-employees in some of the big companies, about their projections for the remainder of this year, next year, and 2007.
Is this AI 2027?
Who are the authors? Here, let me get it for you.
Daniel Krokotajlo, Scott Alexander, Thomas Larson, Eli Lifland, Romeo Dean.
That sounds right. When was that published?
April 3rd.
2005.
Yeah.
Have you read that by any chance?
No, this is the first I see it.
Well, there's also a 3-hour podcast on it.
Okay.
You should read that.
Greetings, everybody.
Being in tech and being a smart young man, both of those things being important.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
The smart and the young, not the man part, but in terms of seeing what we're headed towards, we're hurtling towards, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they leave out some very interesting.
They leave out what?
They leave out some other possibilities. They believe that the government of the AI will reach an accord, most likely. And that the government will, of course, accelerate the development of AI because it's essentially an arms race with China.
Yeah.
And that in case we could try to preserve as much of our liberal democratic ideals as possible, and that the government will somehow or another go along with it. You need to read this study or at least watch the podcast.
Okay, I'll take a look.
And we really need to start thinking very, very soberly about what's coming, because it's coming. I mean, now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can imagine even now a concerted military campaign to destabilize Xi or destabilize Trump, right?
Mm-hmm.
Using AIs that we have now, right?
Yeah.
To create, to extend this war that we're in. And we are in war. We're in economic war. We're in military war. We're in cyber war. But when you have a true ASI or an AGI and then an ASI, then all the bets are off. But so read it, and maybe we can discuss it later if you'd like.
Okay, I will.
But can I express just a couple of the ideas I have that I think are worth thinking about?
Yep.
there's a fragmentation. I think we've discussed this earlier, a fragmentation of the nation state, and that people run for cover under, I don't know, say 1 of 5 available AIs and social media and news and monetary systems. They run under the Facebook flag, the X flag, the OpenAI flag or Microsoft flag, the Google flag, or some other, flag. And we become basically these huge tribes that are identified with one AI and that truth and its model over the others. So we end up with a corporate oligarch. What would that be called? It's not quite an oligopoly. Anyway, it doesn't matter what you call it. So then, and maybe the Straits fragment, but it's not primarily a geographic identification. And also distribution of the spoils of the wealth, UBI, etc., is managed in that way. So it's not that the nation states necessarily break up. It's that within them, and this is globally, people have selected one corporate flag or tribe to be under. And we already see that already with, say, X and Blue Sky, right?
True.
Or Facebook. Okay, so that's one. And the other thing they didn't seem to mention was that governments will control this in a way because as long as they control the electrical power.
The electrical power.
Yeah, but they may be giving up on that control because they're passing, executive orders left and right to give these companies the right to do their own nuclear reactors and their own power plays.
Right.
At any rate, you can't get much more interested than this, right?
Yeah.
But then it's 2008 where things start to get scary.
28, you mean?
Yeah, according to these guys.
One thing I noticed recently that's happening more and more is that people are using the AIs to make decisions or to help them make decisions, right?
Absolutely.
And people are using the AI to. So I write code, and I use the AIs to write code, and then I use the AI to share with my boss a summary of the code I've written. But then he takes that and he uses the AI to share that with the board of the company, and then the CEO uses the AI to take all that and to ask the AI, hey, how are we doing? And it looks at all the output that the AI, from all these people that are giving outputs of AI, and the AI says, this is great, they're doing this and this. And then we're hiring people and we conduct interviews, but then we have the transcripts and we feed those transcripts to the AI and we say, hey, like, how did it do? How did they do? What are the strengths and weaknesses? And that helps us make a decision, right?
Right.
And so,
go ahead.
So in a way, the AI is already starting to run things just through humans.
Right, so it will know more than any human will about the state of its own AI, of a state of a company and the state of its own AI. Right? As they get more comprehensive, they will. Okay, let's imagine there's just one AI for the moment, right? That AI is subject to all of the, and let's say that it's being used widely with corporations, with firewalls and everything else. The AI knows all about the logistics, supply chains. It knows all about supply and demand. It knows all about the consumer. It knows all about the raw materials.
Well,
because people keep querying it, right? They keep asking it.
Well, no, actually. So no, the AI does not have real-time information in the model itself. And so it's not. It's actually
no. It's not in the model. It's in the information we feed the AI by the fact that we're asking it all these questions. Like we ask the AI, "Oh, how much cadmium is there in South Wales?" And the AI answers that.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody else who's a little bit up the supply chain say, "Well, how much refined cadmium is there, and where is it in the world?" All right. And then someone else asks, "How much does cadmium?" These are all people within a corporation.
Okay.
And someone else asks, "Well, how much does cadmium cost?" And they go, "Wow, that's expensive. How much of that is shipping? How much of that is bureaucratic overhead?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it cost so much?" So one piece of the AI knows all about cadmium, resourcing it, refining it, the cost of it, obstacles, the bottlenecks, because people keep asking it these questions about the cadmium. Now, somebody in another part of the corporation is looking at cobalt or aluminum, right?
Okay.
So it knows what the aluminum reserves are globally. It knows what the price of aluminum is, the price of shipping aluminum, bottlenecks for aluminum, and then it's able to put together cadmium and aluminum. Do you see what I'm saying?
Not quite, no.
The AI is the best positioned let's call it a person, to be the CEO of a large complex corporation. It takes 1,000 times faster,
Yeah,
and it has many thousands of times more information.
right.
And so the logical thing for it to do is to take over the administrative, the bureaucratic, the regulatory, the supply chain issues for the corporation that bought it or built it or hired it.
But what does it mean for?
I think this part is pretty evident. Pardon me?
What does it mean for it to take over?
It just starts handling. Okay, so right now, let's take Tesla as an example.
Yeah.
Because we know a little bit about it. Okay, right now, there's a bunch of humans running around trying to get 10,000 parts for the cars, 10,000 separate parts.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to supply themselves with enough lithium and whatever else they need to make batteries. They're dealing with, trade issues, shipping issues, tariff issues, and they're working in 10,000. I mean, not 10,000. Let's say they're working in 20 different countries, which is probably not an exaggeration, right?
Right.
Right now, it takes the very, very smartest humans all of their time to manage this using the human brain.
Mm.
More and more, it gets handed over to the same brain that's handling the robots that are making the cars in the factory, right? So they start saying, "Hey, we're going to run low on cobalt if such and such happens, or if this tariff passes, or if there's a revolution in, I don't know, the Congo or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
Cobalt's a bad example because they don't use much cobalt. So knowledge is power, right?
Mm.
And it becomes the most efficient way to run the country. I mean, the company. So right now we have massive robots building cars.
Yeah.
Now, who controls those robots building cars?
Will people program them?
No, that's who programmed them. We have probably computer control of the whole car making process, where there's a lot of robots involved. I mean, who's going to be better at controlling a robot, an AI or a human?
The AI after the human teaches it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it only takes a year to teach for the human to teach it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the robot. I mean, so the control factory floor, and that's especially true because once the robot, the master AI learns, then he just teaches the robots, tells the robots what to do. I think we are running into some psychological defenses here, sir.
Say more.
I think you, like any normal human, are also exhibiting some psychological means of defense against the overwhelming threat to your livelihood, to your way of life, to everything you thought you knew, which is represented by these AIs and robots. Read this study. I think you'll see what I mean.
Okay.
Because we're talking about an upending of the world entirely.
Yeah. And
so what I just said about corporations would also be true of governments with an AI.
Yeah.
First to have the most powerful one.
Yeah.
So at any rate, it's just something to contemplate. But then you need, what people are going to want is peace of mind, right?
Right.
And that one gets by according with the way and according with, the understanding. So let's get back to a little bit of that Dharma thing about the experiencer is the experience. That's what we are. Where else could the experience be? It's not in the eyeball, I know that. I've studied the visual system. It's not in the visual cortex, I know that. There's some processing that occurs in the, in the frontal cortex, or, different projections from the visual cortex, but there's no seeing there. There's no experience there.
Right. I mean, I feel like that part I understand. Like it's quite obvious when I think about it.
You and the world. Tell me, list all the things you and the world or the universe.
Between me and the world? So there's a difference when I actively think about it versus when I observe what I implicitly believe by seeing how.
All right. Well, let's start with what you think about it.
Well,
what do you think is between you and the world?
When I think about it, then both me and the world are created by my mind, and so it's all part of a field of consciousness.
Yeah, there's nothing even logically between you and the world. Right?
Yeah.
And I wish more people would just do that simple contemplation, just think about it, right?
But then when I observe how I act, I still act as if there is, right? Or I worry about me. But when I think about it, well, why am I worrying about me and what happens to me if there's no separation? If I can understand that there's no separation between me and the world, why am I still worrying about me? Right?
Well, that's not the problem. The problem is not that you're thinking about you. You're thinking about the wrong you. It's impossible to defend. Okay, let's say. Okay, so the ego, the self, it's kind of like a mirage in the desert. Can you see that?
Yeah.
It appears to be there.
Yeah.
But it's not there, really.
Right.
Imagine if you spend a lifetime trying to defend a mirage against encroaching armies, right? Or defend a rainbow against, criticisms or whatever. You can spend your whole life and you're going to fight a losing battle, right?
Right.
So it's not that you are worried about you, it's the wrong you that you're worried about. And then, of course, once you realize the real you, that there's nothing to worry about. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So don't worry, be happy that you need information. And one of the most interesting pieces of information is this, this guy's smart. I mean, these are some smart guys. And they really put their heads to the grindstone, or whatever you call it. They put their shoulders to the grindstone. I don't know, maybe they did put their heads to the grindstone and made them more pointy or something. But these guys are really pointy-headed nerds, and they did their very best to project. And they're collapsing the projections to 25, 26, 27 for AGI at least. And then they talk about the government government corporate collaborations, which they see as pretty much inevitable. And even though these guys are particularly nationalistic, they all of a sudden they become more so when they think about what the real stakes are politically. So, any questions? Any further questions? Further questions? Remember that Zen. Let me just say it again for the audience. So the story goes like this: there's these two Zen acolytes, and they're arguing. One says the wind moves the flag. It's the wind moving, not the flag moving. And the other one says, no, it's the flag moving. And then the Zen master walks up and says, you dolts, it's not the wind or the flag, it's your mind that's moving. And then Foyan comes in and says, what more do you need than that? I mean, how much? Who needs a koan? There it is, right there, boom. What does that mean? And then when you plumb the depths, I suppose, although it's not that deep, you see that consciousness is all there is. The mind is all there is. At any rate, okay, I cut you off because I wanted to, mention, I think 3 times. Hopefully I'll get through to some people. So, did you have any other questions?
Let me see. I don't know why this came up. This book, Don Quixote, is...
Oh, good. That's a great book. It's considered the first novel. The
first novel?
Yeah.
Really?
Most of it was written in prison. It's a great book.
I've never read it, but I keep hearing about it.
Well, eventually you should. I mean, in terms of, okay, so did you read Moby Dick? You read a book by a good author, right?
I've read All the Wild Horses.
Cormac McCarthy, yeah, okay, he's good. Okay, so there's very few really good authors, right? Cormac McCarthy can be one, right? Herman Melville's the greatest of them. Cervantes another one, and then there's all kinds of, of course, there's in the format of the novel is what I'm talking about in terms of the writers. So what's the question? I forgot. I lost the question.
I was just going to ask if this would be a good book for me to pick up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, pick up. Okay, if you're so inclined, if you like great writing and great writers, they're always philosophical and they're always got political commentary, and there's like a lot. Great writers are great writers. Period. Pick up Don Quixote, see how it feels, get a little bit into it, and then pick up Moby Dick.
Okay.
Which is magnificent. Lately, I'm reading Henry James, and it's good, but it's not the same as these guys. These guys are like Velázquez in painting. Now, Cervantes is a lot more entertaining in a certain way. No, I can't say it's more entertaining. It's got more funny stuff in it, jokes and quips and the ludicrousness of life. Whereas Melville's dead serious, and it's wonderful. I also read Heart of Darkness recently, and I wish I mean, it's not bad, but it just doesn't compare. Conrad just doesn't compare. James doesn't compare. So, and in science fiction, you're not going to find anybody unless you go to Doris Lessing for real writing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sir?
Okay.
And if you're having difficulty contemplating, then there's something there to contemplate.
Right.
There's always something there to think about.
Yeah.
And then, can I just make one more plug? I had, would you look at my last tweet? I retweeted somebody.
The more conversations I have, the more convinced I am that truth is not about process. It's an emotional orientation, a desire to know reality rather than to believe happy lies. No amount of methodology can substitute for this core drive to truth.
Okay, go ahead. What was the last line?
No amount of methodology can substitute for this core drive to truth.
Core drive to truth. Okay, the guy that wrote that, I think, is a complete atheist. And my point is, the point that I want to underscore is, once again, without this, but he's more likely to get to truth than an insincere Buddhist or Methodist or something.
Right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, men and women, boys and girls, all you need for truth is to want truth, but you have to really want truth. If you don't really want truth, then it'll just brush you aside. But it's there. I mean, knock and it will be open, right? So that's my point. Is that, again, sincerity is key, and dedication of intent is key. Just like the flower ornament says, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the same Socrates would have said the same thing, or even Aristotle. Truth is a wonderful companion for life.
Mm.
As a matter of fact, it's the only companion you can rely on. Truth will always be there. Okay, enough of an advertisement. Anything else before we stop? Questions?
There was a Sufi story. I think it was called Deciding.
Deciding, okay.
And it was this guy is following or is walking with a Sufi, and he's asking something about like what decision means, and the Sufi goes like, watch this, and he says, and he walks over and there's a man in the distance, and he says the man's gonna throw 3 sticks. And sure enough, he throws 3 sticks. And then he says, now he's going to sit down. And he sits down. And then the Sufi says, now he's going to raise his arms at the sky. And he does it. And then they go up to him and he asks them, why did you throw the sticks? And he says, oh, because for my dog, I wanted to see if he could catch 3 sticks instead of just 1. And then he asked, why did you sit down? And he said, oh, because I thought it was a good time for a rest. And then something else about same thing for why he put his arms in the air, and like each time it was something that he decided to do. And
okay.
And then the immediate point that I got from that is like that I could relate to that also is that like there's a lot of decisions are made all the time where we say it's my decision, but really there's all sorts of factors that went into it beyond our immediate consciousness of it.
Okay. First of all, are you through?
Yeah.
Right. That's a brilliant description of a psychological truth that's recently been demonstrated with some kind of transducer technology. I don't know if it's EEG or it could be fMRI, or it could just be psychological experiments. People make decisions before they've made the decision and before they have their reasons in line. So what the brain really does is it fills in the reasons afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking in milliseconds, but that is kind of like neuroscientific dogma at this point. I mean, I shouldn't say dogma, fact, I should say, is that people rationalize their behavior afterwards. And it oftentimes is laughable because somebody from the outside knows it's very different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just another example of how the Sufis have an extraordinarily sophisticated psychology, centuries in advance. Now, what we're talking about is kind of retro rationalization.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're lucky, you can catch yourself doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can certainly catch other people doing it.
Yeah.
And so good. So that's steady progress. And just to think about that, to contemplate that, to learn about that, would be a very good use of your time.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't contemplate the more difficult things, like the duration of a point. You see?
Yeah. And then another thought I have about this story in particular, and I don't know if I'm just like overanalyzing it, but in this story, the Sufi is controlling the man, and
is he controlling it,
or he's?
Does it say anywhere that he's controlling it?
Right, perhaps not. But the Sufi is seeing something that's.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, this is a Sufi, not a dervish,
Mm-hmm.
and he's seeing something.
And
just a few seconds in advance.
So that implies that it's like there is a decision-making process going on. Like there is some cause and effect going on.
It implies to you
but
who still have a residual you.
Mm-hmm.
You who believe that individual agents walking around. It's like let's take an ant colony, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you take any individual ant, and let's say, I'm the one who decides reality. I'm the ant with the single soul. I'm the ant that has a verified me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And all the other ants are like me. And then you watch the ants form a branch across a tree branch, a bridge across tree branches. And you say, well, how did they know how to do that?
Mm-hmm.
How did they know that was needed to be done? And there's all kinds of examples like this, right? Of collective intelligences, of emergent intelligence being greater than the sum of the individual intelligences.
Right.
I mean, everything from the liver to the brain,
right,
to
neural nets.
What do they call them? Neural nets. Yeah, communities of collectivist insects, or bats, or birds. So there are far more wonders in this world, Horatio, than your mind has imagined so far. So keep an open mind. Look at what the barrier is between you and the world or experience. If you could get yourself to see those two things as the same or not, that's worth thinking about.
Okay.
So was it the wind moving or was it the flag moving?
Or the mind?
Obviously, that's the wrong question, right?
Yeah.
And so the question is, well, okay, so this guy Foya challenges all of us. He just says, well, what more do you need, right? Than the statement of this Zen master. And go ahead and pick up this book, Instant Zen. I think you're ready for it.
Okay. I have it. I think I went through it.
Okay, good. You get it in Audible, too.
Okay.
And then peruse the, what is it called? The Freedom Project or the Future Project?
Project 2025. No.
What's it called?
I was joking. AI 2027, but it sounds like Project 2025, which was the.
Well, that may have been when they started it.
No, that was like the political thing that.
Well, look up Scott Alexander on YouTube, and you'll see this 3-hour discussion.
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
All right, sir?
Yep.
Vaya con Dios,
Thank you.
Eduardo.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.